Morning, or shall I say almost close to afternoon, my fellow zombies. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Standard Time on the West Coast, Rosamond, California. It's still the 19th of July, 2023, the Weaver Gen C, Rosamond, California. Thankfully, in an air-conditioned environment out here where the temperatures are still going to be climbing into the triples pretty shortly, if they're not there already. I came across a story on CNN, and it kind of jogged a few things in my memory. I'm hoping it holds out. Was it within this past week or last week that there was an airline, Delta Airlines had a plane stuck out in Las Vegas tarmac, waiting to go. But for some unforeseen reason and unspoken reason, the airline was stuck. The airplane was stuck. Nobody was moving out of the damn tarmac. If I remember some of the material I've learned about over the past few years concerning about atmosphere, airplane travel, and the damn heat, everything's relative. If we're talking about heavy air, heated heavy air, lying flat on Las Vegas, and the temperatures would be about 116 roughly. Imagine what the tarmac would be at that point, because they're melting. And not to mention the tires. If they have to stay in the tarmac long enough, they'll be melted too. But it's not that. It's trying to get an airplane into the air, not just a light plane. We're talking about heavy-duty planes, transports. We're talking about commercial airlines. If there's not sufficient enough air and it's stagnant and it's heated, the plane cannot get enough to lift. And this is what I've been hearing throughout the years. Every time I keep hearing about these airplane experts out there, they really hadn't quite covered that particular thing there. I've tried to be a little bit knowledgeable in a lot of things. I'm not an expert in anything. I remember the stories that they've had in Phoenix, Arizona, where when the temperature rose to a certain point and the air was totally stagnant, they had to shut down the airports because the airplanes could not lift. They could not take off, let alone land. There still has to be some kind of atmosphere pushing against them so they can get the lift necessary to get up. But the air was stagnant. The air was stagnant and oppressive, pressing down, cooking everything. And the planes had a problem concerning about taking off. In the coolness of the morning, if it was at a certain point, temperature up to a certain point, they could get up. But once they reached that targeted temperature range and it was becoming really oppressive, there was no way the planes were going to be able to get off. I remember hearing stories about this when there was a massive heat wave happening in Arizona and a few other places that airports had to shut down. Flights were really delayed at this point over here, jammed up. I mean, they could try getting the planes down if there had sufficient enough air to land on. I really need to study more about aeronautics. I really do. But when you have that much oppressive pressure on you and it's heated, you really feel the suffocation because your air and your lungs are not able to suck in enough oxygen. But the airlines, the way they would lift off is with the elevators that they have, the flaps. You elevate the flaps to get the rush of the air on the airplane as it's trying to take off, because it would help lift the wings. It would lift the airplane up But if there's no pressure and there's no wind, there's no downdraft, there's nothing to push on them, then they have a hell of a time trying to lift up. It's bad enough the choppers also have a problem with that too. Because we're dealing with a pressure of going down here. There's not enough lift bringing them up. Being stuck in an airplane for hours until you get to a certain point of pressure or temperature that you can actually get the aircraft out. And then you got rules and regulations in the federal government and in the airline industry on how an airplane and how safety of all sorts, including passenger safety inside, has to be taken care of and has to be treated. A long time ago, there was this passenger bill of right. I don't know if it ever got passed or not. I'm going online for that one because I remember hearing about that a great deal. Okay. There was this bill called, back in 2021, S3222. I'm going on Congress.gov on this one. So I'm trying to see if this actually got passed through the session. And it was just a summary for the thing, but just never, I don't think it ever got billed. It was just introduced in the Senate a long time ago. But it was just introduced back in 2021. But nothing happened to it. It died in Senate. We had it. And they screwed it up. According to the Department of Transportation, there is also, back in 2019, they tried to reintroduce it one more time. Well, back then. But nothing was done after that. According to back in the Department of they had the fly rights mentioned in the U.S. Department of Transportation page. It's under air consumers / fly rights. Schedule tickets, delayed cancel flights, package, frequent flight programs, contracts, travel scams, airline safety and security. Let's see. Okay, airlines don't guarantee your schedule if flight's delayed. Okay, so talking about weather, out of control, stuff you don't even have control over. They talk about it, but they don't guarantee anything. I'll see. Some place delayed on tarmac before taking off. Plane determines that there's a safety or security reason why the plane cannot taxi to the gate, and the plane's passengers or air traffic controller advised the pilot be taxied into the gate to another location. They can be deplaned. According to part of it here, I'm trying to read some of it. It says some flights are delayed on the airport tarmac before taking off on or after landing. DOT rules prohibit most U.S. airlines from allowing a domestic flight to remain on the tarmac for more than 3 hours unless, okay, let me repeat the other stuff. Unless the pilot determines that there's a safety or security reason why the aircraft cannot taxi to the gate and deplane to its passengers, or the air traffic controller advises the pilot that taxiing to the gate or to another location where passengers can be deplaned would significantly disrupt airport operations. And since we don't know what the hell happened during that time, what I need to understand is what the hell happened. So let us do a search on this one here. Should be news about this thing somewhere in here. Okay, so actually, it was just a couple hours ago that NBC News popped it. Okay. Here we go. Delta passengers fall ill while stuck on tarmac for hours during blistering Las Vegas heat wave. Okay, let's see. Delta flight out of Las Vegas was canceled Monday after several passengers and at least one crew member fell ill amid uncomfortable temperatures on the plane as they waited for it to take off during an unrelenting heat wave, the airline said. Multiple customers on Flight 555, which had been bound for Atlanta from Harry Reid International Airport, were seen by first responders, including a passenger and a flight attendant, had to be transported to a local hospital, according to Delta. Yeah, they apologize, but what the thing is, what I'm looking for right now what I was trying to find out is what the explanation was, but they're not telling the people what the hell happened, except there was 111-degree weather out there. Okay, so as much as I would understand it, maybe the tarmac got so superheated. I'm thinking on, and the air was so oppressive that they could not get the lift necessary until conditions changed, and they were waiting for that. But there's nothing else on the news about the thing in the first place. Okay, so doing a little further research on this one here. Try this one, Boston, due to icy weather. Icy weather is one thing. Icy weather is one thing. They would still have the lift necessary. The air for heat is supposed to be heat rises up, but they're not giving it an opposing wind. But it is so oppressive of the heat itself, it's melting, and it doesn't give enough lift for planes to go. And if it's icy conditions, then the planes really would have problems concerning about engines icing up, not to mention the body icing up left and right. They would have to get de-icers. Nothing from Men in Black either. To make sure that the plane's not going to be frozen ice cube flying up in the sky and then crashing and burning. But they still would have air to go up in the sky. They would still have enough pressure for that one. But to have air conditioning not working on the plane, unless it's determined that the plane is going to be working through the atmosphere, that they still would need to have some kind of comfortable conditions. But being cooked in a Spam in a can is not conducive to human tolerance. Even 2 or 3 hours, even a few minutes is not conducive. A lot of people have reported it, and the stories have been posted up and down the seaboard concerning what happened yesterday. But the thing is, what I'm looking for is not just the story itself on it. What I wanted to find out is what the airline's response is. I mean, why did they do that? But they won't go into the details. The problem is, none of them are dealing with the details on this one. So again, the assumptions are either it was too hot for the plane to move, there's not enough air pressure for it to fly, tarmac was melting and so was the plane. Something that happened where they had to have medical help. I guess the flight was canceled because they didn't say anything about it going. Passengers were told it was because of the weather. And other passengers would say uh, staffing shortages. Maybe. I'm thinking of weather situation. I'm thinking of weather situation. If it was that bad, yeah. You guys let me know what's going on. Put it in the comments.